Hello my friends, so I decided to do a video to go along with my blog post because people don't like reading stuff. They like a face to go with words. So I wrote a post about the 10 commandments for creating a kick-ass gaming reel. And you may be thinking, well, who the hell are you to tell me how to do my gaming reel? Well, I am an experienced voiceover artist. I've done a few games, but it's an area that I really wanted to focus more on. And so I've been doing quite a lot of workshops and webinars and with coaches and casting directors. Read lots of interviews, played a lot of games. You're welcome. And the rest, I think, is common sense, but it turns out common sense is not all that common. So I've chosen to focus on video games because it's one of the newer areas of voiceover. Yes, games have been around for a long time, so have voiceovers in games. But until quite recently, it always felt like a bit of an afterthought. The sort of graphics and the music and the gameplay was more of a priority. But I think now that the gaming industry is booming, it's doing so well, it's rivaling Hollywood, it's worth so much money and the technology is so much better that you just cannot get away with crap voice acting in games anymore. It's also only relatively recently that voice actors have started showcasing a specific gaming reel as opposed to just having a character and animation reel. And that's why I wanted to focus on games specifically, because when I was creating my own demos, I got quite confused with what to put in the character and animation demo and what to put in my gaming demo. And although there is going to be some crossover, they are quite specific markets. So it wasn't really until I did the research that I really found the answers to my questions. And so I thought I'd consolidate all that knowledge into one manageable lump sum for you guys. I am making a few assumptions here with these rules, the first being that you're vaguely talented and that you've had some kind of coaching or training. If not, then in the words of my favourite video game heroine Lara Croft, no, that's not right. Go back to the start and try again. So here are the 10 commandments for creating a kick-ass gaming reel. Number 1, thou shalt not put in every voice and accent you can do. I'm the first to admit that I totally did this. I focused too much on accents and voices rather than creating interesting, living, breathing, believable characters. And it's a really tough ask because you only have about 2 minutes and you want to tick off those stereotypical gaming archetypes, but you also want to show that you can bring something interesting and new to the table. And please do try and include some characters we haven't heard before rather than just sound-alikes from your favourite games. Also consider the characters you actually want to play. Sure, in the beginning of our careers we may not have the luxury to pick and choose what parts we get, but if shouty military lines are not your thing, don't feel like you have to include them in your demo just to tick that box. Rule 2. Thou shalt only include characters you can sustain consistently. If you slip out of character or voice, and you can only do certain types of lines in that voice, like only comedic lines or only dramatic lines, then I probably wouldn't put it in. In fact, if you even really have to think about the accent too much when you're recording, maybe don't put that voice in. Because I've heard so many casting directors say that they cast someone on the basis of a great gaming reel, but in the live, pressurized environment, they couldn't deliver that voice consistently or without straining. Because remember, you might be recording for absolutely hours on end, and you don't always get very well written lines in games either, so you've got to make what you get sound good, even if it's just an emote. So the accent kind of really needs to be firmly embedded in your muscle memory so you can just forget about it and focus on the many other aspects of performance that you've got to get right. Rule number 3. Thou must always include the following accent in your demo reel. Your own. Yes, the best accent that you probably can do in a gaming reel is your own or a subtle variation on that, because nobody can do you better than you, and you've got way more XP. So it's a good idea to start your gaming reel with a character that's quite close to your own natural voice, not just because it's going to be your most believable accent, but also because it helps show casting directors your native accent. Rule 4. Thy gaming reel is not your animation reel. Leading on from the first few rules, understand that your gaming reel is aimed at a different market and it serves a different purpose to your character and animation reel, but there will be some overlap. I had real trouble getting my head around this one until I actually started playing and researching games. See Rule 5. Though there are some games that have that zany comic book look and feel, the trend at the moment is very much towards the cinematic, realistic performances. And that's not a coincidence. It's evolved alongside the technology and the graphics. And if you're lucky, you might get to do both the voice and the motion capture for a character. So it's worth considering that. You can definitely have those quirky comedic characters in your arsenal and include them in your reel, by all means, but show that you can do subtlety and nuance, because sometimes the most compelling scenes that we see are when a character is desperately trying not to express emotion. And this is actually something I've kind of noticed in workshops that people sometimes struggle with, particularly if you're coming from a radio or theatre background, because maybe it's because we're told we should be a little bit over the top, and if necessary then we can dial it back, or perhaps we're used to giving a little bit extra in terms of projection because we're not seen, or because we have to command attention over graphics or music. These are really useful considerations to have, but you've got to be prepared to throw them out the window if necessary. So in summary, if it's a quirky anime style character, it should probably go in your animation reel. Duh. So animation reels maybe are showing your character range more, but your gaming reels should skew towards your acting and your emotional range. Rule number 5, thou shalt actually play or research some games. Oh my god, I want to work in games. Okay, so what was the last game you played? Yeah. I'm not saying that you need to be a pro gamer or even a casual Twitch streamer, but you do need to understand the different game genres, platforms, characters, developers, who's killing it at the moment in the industry, what the trends are, and what you can do to try and emulate that, while still obviously doing you. Number 6, thou shalt consider the environment. No, I don't mean your carbon footprint or even your recording space. I'm kind of taking it as a given that you're recording somewhere acoustically sound. What I mean is the situational environment that your character is in. So many demos are really one level, and I think that's one of the key differences between average and great demos. So have some lines where you're speaking intimately to another character, alongside a few where you're battling to be heard over the elements or the battlefield. And this also has the added benefit of showing that you've got good microphone technique, that you know that the shouty lines need to be delivered off axes to avoid peaking and pissing off your sound engineer, and the more whispered lines, you can move in closer to the mic, but then you need to be more mindful of your mouth noise and your plosives, etc. And if your character is doing something physical, try and emulate that as best you can in the confines of the booth. Speaking of which, rule number 7, thou shalt breathe and move like an actual human being, unless you're playing a robot. If you're used to doing corporate and commercial work, you're probably used to taking a big breath and giving your client or your sound engineer a really nice clean take without the breathing. But if you do this with characters, I think it sounds a bit unnatural. Because you know what? Real people, they breathe, they move, they gesticulate, and you want it to be real. So sometimes it's that little intake of breath or little exhalation of dismay that really kind of makes that character come off the script and be real. So it's time to kind of get out of your head and into your body more and think about the physicality of your character. How do they move? How do they hold themselves? Are they young, old, fit, unfit? Are they inside or outside? Moving or stationary, angry, defeated, all those different dimensions. Rule number 8. I really struggle with this one. Thou shalt kill your babies. As with anything creative, you need to be prepared to kill your babies and say goodbye to some great characters that don't always make the final cut. And this can be for a variety of reasons. Number 1, you're short on time and there were better characters and performances. Number 2, the line was too long or too slow that it just seemed sort of jarring. 3, the line didn't make much sense without the context of the scene or the other character. 4, it's such a niche character that it's unlikely to be something you'd book very often. Conventional wisdom for gaming reels is between 1.5 to 2 minutes. It really does depend on your range. Honestly, some 60-second reels I've heard have felt like 5 minutes, and some 2-minute reels have left me, wanting to hear more. So as with all reels, put your best stuff earlier on. However, I really love gaming reels that have a good crescendo, that have a sort of movie trailer-like ending that they build to something. But that's just me, and you've got to understand that some casting directors are not even going to get to the end of your reel, unfortunately, because they're busy people. Busy people. You want to be showcasing a wide variety of archetypes, statuses, and emotions. If you've already ticked off Angry Shouty Warrior, you probably don't need to hear that multiple times in your reel. And remember what I said in rule number 6 about considering the environment, because this is what keeps your reel from sounding quite samey, like it was all recorded at the same time on the same microphone in the same place. And obviously avoid putting similar sounding accents or voices back to back for that reason as well. Rule number 9, thou shalt never produce your own gaming reel unless you actually can. This is a really controversial one because we all have to start somewhere, and good gaming reels are really expensive. So, but the consensus is generally get a professional to do it. If you're working with existing material from games you've already done, it's a little bit easier. But out of all the reels, I think character and animation are the most difficult and time-consuming to produce from scratch, because you need quality writing, you need music, sound effects, direction, technical proficiency. You aren't just creating a character, you're kind of creating a soundscape as well. So here's some things that I think you need to be able to do in your DAW, D-A-W. If you're having to Google what that is, you definitely shouldn't be doing your gaming reel yourself. But these are some things I think you must be able to do. So number 1, working with multiple tracks in your DAW, knowing how to layer and crossfade in and out, having knowledge of EQ and mastering, including the ability to inject different room ambience into your recordings depending on the character's environment, access to high quality, ideally royalty-free and appropriate music and sound effects. Please don't ruin your wonderful, wonderful performance with cheesy, crappy sound effects. And the ability to self-direct and be self-critical about your own voice and performance, and kill your own babies, like I mentioned in rule number 8. Getting a professionally produced demo comes with the added bonus of voice direction as well, and you get a valuable second opinion as to what they think is going on in the industry and what should stay and what should go. But this blessing can kind of be a curse as well, because most games that you'll probably work on are not AAA titles. They don't necessarily have the budget for a casting director or an acting coach. You know, the direction may not always be there. So you've got to be mindful at that. I mean, it's especially not going to be there in the audition stage. So you need to be mindful that, like your headshots, like your acting headshots, it's supposed to be you on a good day, not you sort of completely edited, moulded, photoshopped beyond all recognition and hidden behind badass music and sound effects. You've got to be able to do pretty much everything you did in your reel in the recorded session when you're on your own with no audience, no direction, nobody to monitor your levels. Another point about professional demo producers, which sounds obvious, but people don't often realise this, they don't know what voices you can and can't do. So it's really important that you have experimented beforehand so you know what you can do. Because honestly, you never know what voices are in your toolbox until you try. So that goes back to, again, rule number 5. Play some games. See what voices come up a lot. See if you can emulate them. See if you can do something new. Finally, rule number 10. Thou shalt not swear or overuse filters and special effects. This is just my personal preference, but I'm not really a big fan of hearing profanity in demo reels. I don't think it's necessary to show the emotion, and same goes with filters and special effects. A little bit of robot flanger, a little bit of reverb, that's fine, but we still want to hear that it's you. You know, with enough post-production I could sound like Barry White, but they'd probably just rather hire Barry White, except he's dead, so that's not a very good example. But anyway, if your kind of specialty is the crazy monsters, the screeching, that kind of thing, maybe consider a special demo reel just for that. I don't know if there is much demand for that, but, you know, make there be demand. You know, create your own little market, create your own niche. So to summarise, rule number 1 was, thou shalt not put in every voice and accent you can do. Rule 2, thou shalt only include characters you can sustain consistently. Rule 3, thou must always use the following voice in your demo reel. Rule 4, thy gaming reel is not your animation reel. Rule 5, thou shalt actually play or research some games. Rule 6, thou shalt consider the environment. Rule 7, thou shalt breathe and move like an actual human being, unless you're playing a robot. Rule 8, thou shalt kill your babies. Rule 9, thou shalt never produce your own gaming reel, unless you actually can. And Rule 10, thou shalt not swear or overuse filters and special effects. And there is one more thing I wanted to add right at the end, which may contradict a little bit what I've just said, but I'm going to say it anyway. Don't be so much of a perfectionist that you don't create anything at all, because there's so many barriers to creation, and some are genuine, like money, time, motivation, but some of them we kind of invent ourselves. For example, you might say to yourself, I'm only going to get my demo done when I've trained with insert amazing coach here, or when I've bought my £3,000 Neumann microphone. Neumann? I never know how you say that. Neumann. Or I'm only going to get my new headshots done when I've lost 30 pounds. We can put these sort of conditions on our own success, and things will never be perfect. Do not let perfection be the enemy of the good. You've got to start somewhere. Obviously, you don't want to put something out there that's rubbish with your name on it, but your talent, your voice, and your demo reel, they will evolve over time, and so will the gaming market. So it's an ongoing process. And I know I look back on my earlier demos and I think, oh my God, I'm so much better now than I was back then. I cringe a bit, But that's good. You don't want to be going in the opposite direction, do you? It's a learning curve. But at the time, I thought these demos were amazing. It's all a matter of perspective. So I hope you found that helpful. If I've missed anything, let me know in the comments. You can find my own gaming reel on my website, jennasharpe.com. Hopefully I've practiced what I've preached here. And yeah, let me know how you get on leveling up those gaming reels.